your book is ethics in learning through service. The main topic really today then is ethics. So let's define it. We're looking at the study of morality and the moral choices that we make during our lifetimes. They relate to not just to school and work, but also just generally speaking for all of life. But we all have professional obligations, professional societies. Different engineering majors have different professional societies. How about business majors? You have a professional society, right? What's that called? Don't know. I don't know either. For engineers, we have multiple different ones. There's a mechanical engineering one, there's an industrial engineering one, there's Society of Women Engineers. All the different kinds have different societies. All these societies have different guides, standards, rules of conduct that govern how we operate professionally. All right, so we have that as a sort of overarching, but we also have ethics and morality, so we're going to look beyond that. And ethics really starts now. It starts here, it started already. St. Ambrose has an academic integrity policy. The library has a nice LibGuide put together about it. We're talking about misconduct in regards to our academics. Here's a nice list of some of the things that that includes. These are things that are not supposed to happen. So we don't want to be plagiarizing. We don't want to be complicit in helping somebody commit an act of academic integrity. We don't want to get unauthorized assistance, whether that's bringing a cheat sheet to an exam that you're not allowed to, or trying to look up answers when you're not supposed to, when you're supposed to do your own work. It also includes receiving credit on a group assignment without contributing fairly. We're doing a lot in this class about teamwork, and we're trying really hard to help you work as a team and to make sure that everybody is contributing to that team. It may not be that everybody contributes exactly the same, because that's hard to do, right, to get it exactly even, but there should be a nice range, a nice balance. And it's not just that there's somebody who won't do stuff. That can be a problem, you know, somebody refusing, but it's also that maybe somebody on the team is over-controlling or overbearing. We have all different types of people. We have to learn how to work together and work as a team. And so if we're not doing this and we're not able to either allow or bring a contribution fairly, that is actually an academic integrity violation if you are claiming credit for different work that you're doing and not contributing fairly. Why are we talking about academic integrity here? Well, it is related to ethics, but it is something that 50 to 90% of college students are in violation of. All right, so we're talking about people in this room. We're talking about people in our departments. We're talking about people you live with. 50 to 90%. All right, they may be little things or seemingly little things, and they may be big things, but it's happening, right? And it's hard not to help a friend, right? It's hard not to help a friend. But cheating at school is very indicative of cheating in the workplace, right? If you're doing it here, you're doing it now, chances are you will have to or feel obligated to or be more comfortable with doing it in the future, and that's not a good thing. But we also have a lot of gray areas. Thinking about collaborating, right, versus cheating. Personally, when I was an engineering student, I don't know if I could have gotten through my degree without collaborating with others. I mean, we're obviously collaborating in this class, but in other classes where we have individual assignments, could I do every single part of every assignment all by myself? No. I did ask for help. I did get help. I did collaborate with students, but that can be a gray area, right? When is it just helping somebody out and helping them learn versus actually cheating, right? Somewhere between copying and really working through the problem together or helping somebody work through the problem. That can turn into a gray area very easily. I have a few situations that I want you to think about. And think about, yes, it's definitely cheating. No, definitely not cheating. Or, it depends. This is a gray area. I'll give you a few minutes to think about these 5, and then we'll go over them and see what you all think and discuss them, especially if we have some gray areas. All right, let's take a look at the first one. Asking somebody who's already taken the exam what's on it. Raise your hand if yes, this is cheating. Raise your hand if no, this is not cheating. And raise your hand if it depends, gray area. Interesting, no gray areas. We have some yeses and some nos. All right, so Saad, why is it no?
Because I didn't ask him, I will not ask him like about his answer. I asked him about the test. It's hard, difficult, how many questions, what's chapter, not like his answer or his own way to take the exam.
Okay, so if you already know what the question is on the exam, all the questions.
No, not
No.
question the exam, like no one can
You
tell
mean,
you.
like, is it hard, is it easy?
Yeah, it's all difficult.
So not what's on it,
No, not
necessarily.
yeah.
Ah, okay. Interesting. Is it hard or easy?
I'm just asking them like what to study.
What to
Like,
study?
What chapters is over. You're not
What
asking-
chapters?
Yeah, like you're not asking what.
So are you asking what to study specifically in the chapters, or just, hey, I forgot, what chapters does this test cover?
Yeah.
Ah, what chapters does it cover? So you could answer that without taking the test first, right? That question. Your answer shouldn't change if you've taken the test or not, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that seems fair, right? I forgot, what are the chapters this test covers? Whether you've taken the test or not, you can tell them what chapters it covers. But if you start talking about what's actually specifically on the test, I mean, that's cheating, folks. All right? You're giving them prior knowledge of what's on the test. In fact, I would argue that saying whether it's hard or easy is also hinting at what's on the test. Giving them an idea, oh, well, maybe I should only study 2 hours because it's easy instead of 5 because it's hard. Right? That is helping them, giving them some extra information before the test that you did not have. All right, we're getting into a gray area, but I would really, you should avoid that. All right. Also, what if you told them it's easy, and maybe it was easy for you? Maybe you thought it was easy. Maybe it was easy because you studied a lot, and now they didn't study, or maybe they did study a lot and thought it was hard, and now you've just destroyed and shattered their self-confidence. Well, so-and-so thought it was easy, and I thought it was hard, so maybe I'm just stupid. That's no good. All right, so think about not just, was that cheating, but think about how that might affect that person. Inadvertently, you have no idea, right? It could also boost their confidence. If you said it was hard and they went in and like, that was easy. So maybe it would be a good thing, right? But you don't know beforehand. So I would also really try to avoid that too. Seems innocent, but there's some implications to it that you may not consider, right? It's just safer not to use it. And then Alja was talking about number 2 a little bit here too, making suggestions about what to study to someone who has not yet taken the exam. She's saying, well, let's raise hands first. Is this cheating? Suggesting what to study? Raise your hand, yes. Raise your hand, no. Raise your hand, gray, it depends. All right, we've got a lot of grays, well, half grays and half no's. All right, so what do we think is okay then to do? Anyone? Because we have lots of people. what's okay to suggest to somebody? Anything? Anything and everything?
I mean, you can like suggest, you can be like, hey, like all those terms that we were told to remember for like the quiz early on, you might want to look over the definitions again.
And what if that's all you told them? And what if that's the only thing to test on, is the terms? And then now you told them, hey, study that. Isn't that pretty much telling them what's on the test?
Well, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
But does that mean no one took the test yet?
So if you could answer the question before you took the test, if the answer is the same whether you took the test or not, then you think you can answer it the same way?
Like for example, collaborating with others or studying with someone else. So I haven't taken the test, they didn't take the test yet. So we both didn't know what's gonna come in the exam. So it's not, I didn't think it's gonna be any way achieved.
I like that. So think about it. When somebody asks you, if you have taken the test, what would you answer before you took the test? If it's the same or different, then maybe you should think about whether you should answer that question. If it's the same answer you would give whether you took the test or not, seems like it would be okay to say it, right? Because of course, that would be the same answer whether you knew it was on the test or not.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
guessing at the end.
But if you know what's on the test and your answer is now different than what it was before, now you're giving people information about what's on the test. Whether it's exactly what's on it or not, you're still telling them what's on the test. So yeah, think
that's
about,
if, so if there is someone took the test and the other person didn't. But if
Yeah.
they both haven't taken the exam, so they both didn't.
well,
know.
I'm also saying if you took the test
Oh,
and somebody asked you already, as long as your answer would be the exact same, if you didn't know what was on the test, you could probably do that too, right? I mean, essentially, you saying, these are the things I focused on studying because I thought it was a good idea. And that would be irregardless of whether you know what's on the test or not. It's definitely in a gray area if you already took it, okay? But it's a better way to think about it than just being able to give them more specifics. To be safe, if you've taken the test already, you should plead the fifth. All right, that would just make it easier. Then there's no gray areas, then you're safe, and whatnot. But you can tell them, well, the test covers chapters 3 and 4 and 5. You know, that's the same thing that you would tell anyone. That's what the professor would tell you. All right. Great discussion. Any questions on this? It's not always just hard and cut necessarily. All right. Warren, question?
I was gonna say, would you consider to, well, I guess,
Sure. All right, how about number 3? Making up an excuse for missing an exam or an assignment due date. Is that cheating? Raise your hand for yes. Raise your hand for no. Raise your hand for it depends. All right, easier for me to moderate now. Let's hear, Jake, what you have to say about, you said it depends. What do you think?
Depends, like, so if you don't show up to class for like that day because like you went to the hospital like late last night but didn't have time to send an email, but you came back like with a doctor note the next like couple days, I feel like it would be, teachers would be understanding about that.
Are you making up an excuse in that case, though?
No, but
No,
like,
that's the truth. That's
Yeah.
what really happened. Okay. Any other gray areas? Sod? No? What were you thinking?
I think it depends because.
Yeah, what does it depend on?
Yeah, because if I have, like, something happen to me, like, I can study or go to hospital or something happen, like, with the police, with any kind of like this. So I will have, the excuse for.
Okay, but this is not making up the excuse, though. So what I'm hearing from you all is, if you have an excuse, like, we should be reasonable as professors. And that seems to make a lot of sense to me.
would you say that that's an excuse though, if it's like the night before?
making up an excuse.
You know, like if your excuse was like the night before, like you were in the hospital and you didn't have time to study, does that give you the right to miss the next day? Do you have a test?
So should you be able to skip the test or take the test later is the question?
Yeah.
So what I'm really asking in this
Right.
question is not that, but we'll talk about what your question is. I'm really asking, if you make up an excuse, is that an academic integrity violation? So like, did you make up that your dog ate your homework when you just didn't do it or fell asleep? Or did you tell us that your uncle died and so you couldn't complete it, right? When that didn't actually happen. That's making up an excuse, all right? So that I would think is not cool, especially as we get into like saying a family member died or something, right? That's making us feel emotional about your situation that's not even in existence, right? That is making up an excuse to try to get out of something. But if you are actually sick in the hospital, professors are reasonable people. I mean, we might have to go to the hospital sometimes too, and have to ask for help and get people to help cover us and things. So if something like that happens, you should definitely talk to us, and the sooner the better, all right? Think about it as a work situation. If you didn't show up for work, people are gonna worry about you. Less so in college, because people are coming in and out, it's a little bit more on your own, but if you're not showing up for work, kind of the same thing, right? If you're not showing up for a couple days or something, people are gonna worry about you. So think about work. I mean, if you don't show up for a while, you might get fired, all right? Here, we're not gonna fire you, but if you do miss a lot of class, you will fail now, right? All right, so it's the same kind of things happening. Should you be able to take the test or not? Well, that's an interesting question, and that makes the burden on the professor to make a value judgment about it. So if you notice for our attendance policy, there's no value judgment. You miss because you missed for a funeral, you missed because you slept through class, you missed class, that's all there is. Then as professors, we don't have to parse through, okay, is that a legitimate excuse? Is this a legitimate excuse? Where do we draw the line? Because it gets gray at some point. Seems like if you're missing for your grandma's funeral, that seems perfectly reasonable, and then if you just slept through class, not reasonable, but what if you're in the middle there, right? What if something else comes up? But we are reasonable people, so if there are long-term things that you have going on, and you know that it's going to be missing class, do talk to us and we can work something out, but you want to work it out beforehand as much as possible. So we do have somebody in this class who did have a medical issue, and we will be working with them through it, even though our attendance policy is as such. But if you're a last minute kind of thing, well, I mean, that makes it harder. We'd like to work with you, okay? So be responsible, try to work things out as best you can, as soon as you can. And we are reasonable people. Stuff happens. All right, how about number 4? Looking electronically for an answer during an exam, but not finding the answer. Cheating, yes. Cheating, no. And it depends, gray. Cheating, yes. All right, nothing to talk about, I guess. All right, last one. Knowing someone is cheating but not reporting it. Yes, cheating. We do have a few yeses. No cheating. One no cheating. And how about an it depends? Couple it depends. All right, so we had one who was a no. Matthew, what do you think?
I don't know, I just see cheating as if you're in someone else's, it's like, I mean, obviously, I think it'd be fine to like tell the professor or something, but I don't know if it's, I mean, I guess it like counts against you if you don't. I don't think it's technically your job to. I don't think you're like required to like go tell someone about it. Maybe that's wrong.
All right. Yeah, no, I think this is a very great one. Good discussion. All right, so there are a few people who said it depends. So what are we thinking in the it depends category? What makes it a yes, what makes it a no? Danny?
If you're looking at someone else, seeing that they're cheating, not cheating, so you're looking at someone else. Or can't you be caught? Like during a test.
Like, yeah, so you think you're cheating because you are looking at somebody else
Cheating,
at cheating?
yeah. Like you're
Because you didn't say anything, because
I'm
you,
just saying, like during a test, if you're looking at someone that is cheating, and you're sitting at your desk doing your test, you're not cheating off them, you're being looked at as cheating.
David, you understand what he's saying?
So I think
I'm-
what
I'm
you're
not
saying-
following.
I think what you're saying is you're watching someone else cheat, but it could possibly make you look like you're
You're
cheating
cheating off that
because you're looking at them cheating,
Yeah.
I
not
see.
looking at your test.
I
Is that what
see.
you're saying?
person. Yeah,
Okay.
in a way.
But you're, so you would consider that cheating, or you would think that somebody might consider you cheating. So are you cheating? No,
You're
okay.
not- Yeah, typically you're not cheating, but the
Somebody
assumption
might
could be made
think
that
you
you're
are,
cheating.
okay. So you're not, okay. I would agree that you're not cheating just because you notice somebody cheating,
Right, right.
the noticing. Sod?
Yeah, and also if I saw someone, like looking for someone else, how I can know is cheating. Some people like just like can't focus with his paper because he like when he's focusing, they start to do something else like looking anywhere, you know, nervous. I don't know if he's cheating or
Don't know if they're cheating or not. What if you know that they're cheating, for sure? Like they brought in a cheat sheet or something, or they're pulling out their phone and looking at, what if you know that they're cheating? Is it now cheating for you to not report it, David?
I think that's the whole point of like how all the professors put on their syllabus about academic integrity. I think the integrity is put on the person, not on other people to tell on a person. I think the whole point is to hold yourself accountable. I think that's the whole point of academic integrity, is to hold yourself accountable and not to cheat. But if you do and you get caught, you're going to pay the consequence for it. It's not. I think in a situation like this, I don't think you need to. You shouldn't worry too much about other people. You should just worry about yourself.
Interesting. All right, I think that this is very gray myself, right? I mean, it seems like somebody would be forcing you to be quote unquote a tattletale or something like that, right? Which seems to me a bit unfair to make somebody have to report somebody else. However, not reporting does have consequences for the individual and for the class, for the department, for our school. I haven't been here very long in this area, and there's a few schools in the area, and you hear reputations about schools, some good, some bad, or some good things about a school and some bad things about a school, right? Now, if there's a lot of cheating going on, one would posit that you could get a reputation of, well, that's an easy program, everybody just cheats, right? And that could come back to employers, and maybe nobody wants to hire people from the school anymore. All right? So just because you're not reporting it could have consequences. I mean, we've got 50 to 90% of the people who are cheating in college. And that is a problem. And that is increased from, now I'm going to forget exactly, but say like back in the 80s, all right? We're at more like 20 or 30%, all right? So things are changing. Why are they changing? What's happening here? How can we get it back to that lower amount? Personally, I don't think that I would report it. However, I would recommend to you all to speak with that individual or individuals and talk to them as peer-to-peer, friend-to-friend. Hey, what you did is not cool. It makes me feel uncomfortable. It has consequences for me, not directly, but indirectly. This could change the reputation of our school, of our department. And if this thing perpetuates, you know, that could be a big problem. So I would talk to them about it And it's not an easy thing to do, right? But at least you're not getting them in some major trouble and tattling on them. And, you know, maybe just give them a warning and say, you know, if I see that again, I'm going to have to report it. Like, technically, you should be reporting it, all right? But maybe just start at the peer level and then, you know, give them a chance and be like, let them reflect on it. Let them make their own decision next time, knowing that there's going to be increased consequences for them if you see that happen. That would be my recommendation to you all. Because I don't want to end up having a class or a department or a school that has a reputation for having a bunch of people who are cheating, and that's how people are getting through. All right, that's not something that I want to be a part of. So it's really all of us together working to figure out how to make our school's reputation the one that we want it to be. So if you want to be known for that and you want to sit there and watch people do it over and over again, then let it happen. If not, you don't even have to really get them in trouble, all right? Just talk to them. And as students, you are seeing more or different perspectives and angles than us professors are seeing. All right, so together we have to work on curbing this problem, and maybe hopefully St. Ambrose can get to that 20 to 30% range. Or maybe 0 would be nice. All right, this class ends at 10:40. So I'm going to skip this next one and start talking about sort of the so what. Everyone is doing it, right? 50 to 90%, everyone is doing it. Well, the world is flat, right? Everybody thought the world was flat. It's not flat. All right, so everyone is doing it does not mean, oh, I should do it too. Because I see that, and I understand the pressure behind that, right? People are cheating, they're getting better grades than you, so why don't I just join on the bandwagon, right? Think about other ways of dealing with that so that you don't have to fall down this slippery slope. It's also a burden on the professor and affects everyone's education. Instead of the professor thinking about how to help you learn, they're going to have to be dealing with violations of academic integrity. That takes an emotional toll. It takes a toll on the amount of time and resources and energy of the professor. All right, so it's not something that I want to spend my time on, and it's not something I don't think you want me to have to spend my time on, so I can help better prepare for class, give you comments on your assignments faster. Also, it communicates to the professor that you know what you're doing, when maybe you don't. And that means we can't tailor the class and change it. If everybody in the class doesn't get something, well, we got to revisit that. We got to figure out, why don't you get it? How can we, present the material in a different way, or teach you something else that is similar to it and try to make connections and help you understand. And if you have basically said that you know how to do something, well, now the burden is on you to continue that lie, right? If you cheated your way through and got an A in a class, and then you told somebody that hired you that you know how to do all that stuff, now you get to your job, and now what are you going to do? Now you have to keep covering up the fact that you don't actually know that material at this point. What happens if you need a recommendation letter? All right, sometimes maybe people think that you're cheating or doing something, but they can't prove it. Or maybe you did, and you need a recommendation letter. So cheating has more consequences than just a grade on a particular assignment or something. And grades are not everything. And I feel like a lot of times the grades drive people to want to cheat, right? The situation where, well, everybody else is cheating, they're all getting good grades, I'm not getting good grades. Well, it doesn't seem like it now, but grades are not everything. Once you have your first job, that's what people are going to want to talk about if you want to switch jobs. Oh, well, what did you do at your job? They want to talk about your new experiences. What's the latest and greatest that you've done? Not what did you do in high school, right? We don't put our high school GPA on our resumes anymore. We're in college, right? So we leave that stuff behind, all right? So grades are not everything. Your experiences are. And I want to posit to you, what happens how would you feel if somebody cheated on you? What if they cheated on your friend? All right, they're not exactly the same thing, but a lot of the same emotions and things are happening with that. And I'll end with the fact that enabling cheating really is cheating too, because this is our class, our departments, multiple departments here, our school really, and at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? What kind of an environment and reputation do we want to have? That's what matters. So think about that. I feel like things have been going in a positive direction on this. So some of the stuff that you all have been doing this semester, keep it up, continue to improve, because I would like to, with your help, make sure that we are working on this issue. It still is a gray area though, so let's have some discussion, and in your particular tables that you're in now, and Warren, you can join another table so you're not all alone, come up with 2 examples of academic integrity violations. Think about how you could avoid them, and think about how a professor should handle those situations. So in your tables for about 5 minutes, go ahead and think about these questions and talk amongst yourselves. And then we'll bring it back as a group. And if there's any particular things people want to talk about, or gray areas or questions that they have, stuff that arose that, oh, I don't know what's happening here, or we'll do that. So 3 to 5 minutes now, talking to your groups about these discussion questions. All right, we're going to talk a little bit more about the now what, and review some of the stuff from the chapter, and do some case studies. I will try not to talk your ear off, and just sort of generally speak to remind you, refresh your memory of what was read about in chapter 5. Here are the different topics, or like main headings for the chapter. Is there any important points that you learned from this chapter, or anything you found interesting? Nothing, huh? Personally, I find it interesting that a lot of the codes or standards seem pretty self-explanatory, pretty logical, sort of like be a good person kind of thing, but yet there are gray areas or complexities and nuances that go into it. I think that's very interesting, and I think this is one reason why nuclear engineering really appealed to me, because there is a lot of political and societal concerns and nuances that go into using nuclear power as a power source. So it's very interesting to me. These are the Code of Ethics fundamental canons. There's 6 of them. We're looking at the safety, health, and welfare of the public. That's very important. We only want to do work in areas where we have knowledge and are competent. We need to consider when we're making public statements that we're objective and truthful, that we act as faithful agents, and we avoid deception, and we try to maintain the best standards of professionalism, being honorable, making sure that we hold up good reputations, etc. Kind of be a good person. There's some more specifics in that detail the fundamental canons in the rules of practice that are in your book. And then I wanted to point out some of the professional obligations listed there. And I know these are for engineers, but they're really for everyone. Across different disciplines, a lot of these same sentiments are going to be seen. We want to be honest, have integrity, serve the public, take responsibility, give credit for work for those who have credit to. A lot of these are very similar to our academic integrity policies, right? So these are sort of universal, even though in the book they're talking specifically about engineers. And what I find interesting is now that we have these codes and guidelines, there's something to think about beyond them. Something to be said for being human and not just following the rule to the letter. There are 3 different schemas that you can frame things in. It can be a personal interest. You can look at maintaining norms for society. So if you've taken a general education class in social sciences, maybe something like sociology, you learn that society is dictating a lot of the things that we find acceptable and unacceptable. Whether that necessarily is maybe right or wrong, then you can move into a post-conventional schema where you're weighing those existing norms with your own morals and ideals. They may or may not line up, or maybe they sort of line up but not perfectly. So this is where ethics gets really interesting, and this is where the gray areas arise, and this is where there is no one right answer necessarily. Maybe not even 2 right answers, right? There may be a multitude of ways to look at things, and there is not one right one. This is an interesting one. The model for moral decisions. State the problem in your own words. Identify the issues involved and the stakeholders who will be affected by the decision. Verify facts related to the problem. Develop a list of options for the decision. Is this sounding familiar? Test options using different frameworks or perspectives. Make a decision and follow through with it. And then reflect on the decision and how the decision was made. What does this sound like to you?
The design process.
The problem-solving or design process. It's everywhere, folks. Right? Whether it's in business, whether it's in engineering, whether it's in life, making moral decisions, this process is a very, very useful one. It's not spelled out in dip and pick here, necessarily. It's not spelled out in the colorful circles, but it's the same thing, all right? So you're gonna see it in multiple places, in multiple different classes, all right? Define your problem. There's a lot of steps that go into that. Brainstorm solutions. Test them out. Think about it. Do it, and then maybe iterate, all right? This is the design process. Within the design process, there are different philosophical or ethical frameworks that you can consider, and here's where things really get into looking at the same thing in slightly different way, where there is no one right way. You could be utilitarian, do the most good and the least harm. That sounds good. You could be rights-oriented, where you best respect human rights of all who have a stake. Or maybe it's the ethics of care, best for the most in need. They all sound good, but they're all slightly different in their own way. Additionally, a few sort of seemingly side topics. When we think about design, we should think about the life cycle of our process or product. So not just what is happening when somebody is using the process or product, but from start to finish. What are the inputs? What are the outputs of it? Is there waste that gets created? Are we depleting natural resources? Think about the whole life cycle of your solution. And also think about the societal impacts. So engage your communities, engage your stakeholders, talk to them, get feedback from them, test with the user in the field. These are things that we should be thinking about, hopefully when we start, that they're kind of in the back of our mind, but make sure we do that at the end. So if we put it all together, we're defining or framing the problem, and we can't forget about political and social implications of it. We also want to consider making value decisions, and this is what Dr. Senjam talked about last week, making value decisions. Also do a systems thinking. We talked about this in like week 2 or 3, I think. Look at problems and systems thinking. One cause may have many effects. And then lastly, think about democracy. Everybody should have a say, engage your communities, think about culture, think about history, think about the environment, think about society. Now I know, especially in this class, we have a lot of management students, but for the engineers, it may not be as easy to think about some of these seemingly extraneous things, but we are engineering, we are creating solutions in this class for people. All right, so we do need to think about all these things. And I think it's great and wonderful that we are bringing in this perspective from people from different majors, right? So we can all benefit from all these different perspectives and thinking in different ways.